Welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue on with Excel. We're going to look at a couple of different things and then some more input of formula. And we want to start off by talking about these tabs that you're seeing down here. That's Sheet 1 and Sheet 2. And how do we create these tabs? How do we use these tabs? So I can go from Sheet 1 to Sheet 2 very simply. I click on Sheet 2 and there's some more information. And here's some data that we're going to be working with here in just a minute. Let's create a new one. Let's hit the plus sign down here, create a new sheet. And I'm going to put my cursor over where it says Sheet 3, and I'm going to double click, and I'm going to call this Galaxy. And so I can rename the sheet. I can move it around, and I can move it to between Sheet 1 and Sheet 2. I can move it to before Sheet 1, and then go back to Sheet 2. All right, real briefly then, let's go back to Sheet 2 here. Here's some data that we're going to bring in. I'm going to highlight all this data. Some of this data is actually equations. Let's just kind of go in here to Z. You can see that there's a sine function in here. But I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm going to highlight everything. I'm going to copy it. So go to the Home menu and copy. And then I'm going to go into the Galaxy tab. And I'm going to go up here a little bit. And I'm going to paste, but I'm going to go in here to this paste down arrow. And I'm going to go to paste values. And when I do that, these numbers over here are just numbers. Notice that formula is gone. None of these have formulas anymore, right? That's all gone. And I don't care about the X and the Y right now, so I'm going to get rid of that. And as a matter of fact, the distance and the X, we're going to get rid of all of that. And then the max, the min, and the average, we're going to get rid of that as well, because we're going to put those equations in here in just a little bit. Okay, so what we have here is a list of objects. I didn't bring in the names of the objects, but they're objects that are a distance from the Earth. And the way I find that distance, I use the magnitude of the object, that's its brightness, and then a measure called the extinction. So the equation for the distance, d, is 3.262, and that's actually a conversion between parsecs and light years, times 10, and then there's an exponent in here, and that's 0.2 times m1 minus m2 minus m0 minus 2. So I'm going to put a square bracket there and a square bracket there. And all of that's in parentheses. And then M1 is the magnitude. That's the brightness of the object. And M2 is the extinction. That's based on how much stuff there is between here and there. And then M0 you can see right here. All right, so how do we get this in there? So I start off with an equal sign like I always do, and then 3.262 times, and then 10 to some power. So for exponents, I start off with a caret, which is the value above, or the button above the 6, so shift 6, and that gives me a caret. That's going to be an exponent. Then I'm going to need some parentheses. I have 0.2 times, and we're going to open parentheses again. Notice it's red. The first parentheses is black. The second one here is red, and we're going to get into that here in just a second. Then it's M1, which was magnitude, minus M2, which is extinction, minus M0, which is over here. Close that parentheses, and you're going to notice when I close the parentheses, they're red. Right, so it matches this red parentheses with that red parentheses, so I can look for balancing in parentheses. Then I subtract 2, and I close the parentheses again. This one is black, and that should do it. So there's my distance to the object. These are called globular clusters. I don't want to get into that in too much detail. And then I could copy this equation down. I'm going to have some problems when I do, but I copy it down. Not all of that's correct. Why? Because J8 doesn't exist, right? Remember from the last video, I need a fixed cell. So I'm going to escape out of there. Let me go into here, J4 should be fixed. So I'm going to go ahead and put a $sign in front of the J, which I don't really need, but I'm putting it in there anyway. It doesn't hurt anything. And a $sign in front of the 4. And now if I copy that down, those values are more accurate. You'll notice the J4 code stays the same, but the B and the E columns, the B and the E row values change as I go down, as I copy down. All right, I'm going to delete all that and we'll come back to it here in just a little bit. Then the X value is based on longitude and latitude. Now longitude and latitude are very much like what you see when you look at the globe of the Earth, only this is a globe of the sky. And so this is going to be based on sines and cosines. So it turns out X is equal to the distance times the cosine of the longitude times the cosine of the latitude. So let's put that in, equal sign. The distance is this cell right there, the F4, times, and then cosine is just COS. You'll notice it kind of tells me, hey, this returns the cosine of the angle, so it gives me a little hint if I'm on the right track. Open the parentheses up, longitude, close the parentheses, times the cosine of the latitude. And that should be all I need. And I'm going to have to actually add some to that here in a minute. Okay, so there's my value. I'm not going to get into what X, Y, and Z are in this lecture, but I do want to examine the cosine function for just a second. So I know the cosine of 60 degrees is 1/2. So I'm going to hit equal cosine 60. And when I get that, I don't get 1/2. And that's because in Excel, trigonometric functions, cosine, sine, tangent, all want their value in radians. So if I want to convert that into radians, then what do I have to do? Well, I have to multiply by pi. So times pi, which in Excel is pi. Right? And then you can see it tells me that returns a value there, accurate to 15 digits, divided by 180. Close that off. Oops, I have too many parentheses in there. Okay, we'll take that out. And it doesn't like something. I think it's the pi. I'm going to put open and close parentheses. Yep, that was it. So just a little correction here. It's not just pi, it's pi open close parentheses. And that will give you the value for pi. All right, and you can see when I do that, I do get 1/2. So I could multiply in here, in here I could multiply this by pi over 180 degrees. But I don't want to do that. There's another function in Excel called radians. And let's do this cosine of 60 again. So equal cosine, and then I'm going to put radians, that's a function, and then 60. And what this does is it takes 60 degrees and converts it into radians. Then I need one more parentheses, and there it is. So I'm going to use the radians function in here instead of multiplying by pi over 180 degrees. So radians, open the parentheses, close the parentheses, and then do the same thing in here, radians, open parentheses, close parentheses. And there's my value for X. Right, everything there looks good. And then I just want to copy all that down. Now you already saw me copy the distance, but I deleted it all. Why? Because, well, I'm going to take both of these and I'm just going to pull them down. And that does all the work for me, right? Just drag it all down. I drag both columns together and then I don't have to drag it twice. Then I'm interested in the maximum value, the minimum value, and the average value in there. So I just hit equal sign maximum. Okay, and it says max returns the largest value in a set. Open the parentheses. And I'm going to pull down those numbers. Close parentheses. And there's the largest value. And I could look in here. I'm looking for 78. And there's the 78. I don't see anything bigger than 78. The minimum value, do the same thing. Min, open parentheses, close parentheses, and the minimum value should be negative 14, which is right here. Of course, keep in mind a negative number is smaller than a positive number, right? And then finally, average. And let's say I don't know the function for average. Let's look that up. So I go to help, and I'm just going to click over here on help. That's loaded up, and I'm going to type in average. And it tells me a little bit here about the average function in Excel, and it's just average, right? It talks about it right there. So I'm going to go to equal sign average and do the same thing. Highlight all of them in here. And there's the average value of all of the values that I have. And then one of the powers in Excel is, let's say I'm using a different data set and I want to change 0.6 to 0.2. And when I do that, everything changes because all of these distances are based on that. I shouldn't say everything. The distances change and the x's change. Right? If I go to 0.5, you'll see the distance in the x columns changing. And that's the power of Excel. I can make a change in one cell and it will affect a lot of the others. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you.